last week. Did we get through our 5 white blood cells?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I know that we talked about the fibers. We stopped at adipose, thank you. And our adipocytes, or, yeah. All right. Minimize. All right, so we'll go back and just do a wee bit of review. So here we have our ground substance. Everything needs a foundation. Everything needs a basement. This is where everything is kind of eliciting from. It's going to serve as an obstacle. It's going to be shock absorber. And then we had our fibers. We talked about our collagenous fibers, which is made of collagen. And these are going to be organized into our bundles, and this is what makes up our tendons and ligaments. These are going to be running in the same direction. And think about like our elastic band. If I only have one, it's very easy to stretch. But if I have 100, it's very difficult to stretch because we don't want me to just like flip my arm and have it fly to the back of the room. We don't want there to be a lot of elasticity. And so that's going to be where we have these collagen fibers created together in this very dense kind of, it's not even a mesh, it's just in one direction because they're constantly going to be pulled. Then we had our reticular fibers. And remember, the reticular fibers we talked about is like a hammock. These are going to weave together. They're very fine fibers. They're going to weave together and they're going to support suspended organs and glands. I think the one we talked about specifically was like our kidneys, where our kidneys are just kind of hanging there like a chandelier. And so these are going to come together and they're going to form this little hammock to help support them. And then finally we have our elastic. These are going to be exactly what they sound like. They stretch, they contract. They're our vocal cords. Your vocal cords are vibrating against each other. That vibration is then filling up the room. 3 little bones on the inside of your ear pick up the vibrations, just like Morse code. Do, 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 do. Converts it to an electrical impulse that your brain then interprets as sound. So there technically is no such thing as sound. It is your brain's interpretation of vibrations. And it's the wavelength that these vibrations are coming out of my mouth that gives you the pitch. The slower the wave, the lower the pitch. And the faster the wave, the higher the pitch. All right, so now we move on to some different cells. We have our fixed cells, and what a fixed cell is the cell that doesn't move. It just stays right where it is. They're going to stay in the connective tissue. These are going to begin as blasts. We talked about blast versus site versus clast. A blast is a very active cell. As it matures and slows down, it becomes a site, which is the medical term for cell. And then we have our clast, which can either designate a senior cell or a cell that breaks other stuff down. So here are the cells, sadly, that make up our fat, adipocytes. Adipocytes make up adipose. And the fat tissue is going to be our storage unit. When you are called upon to need energy, but you have not taken in any new energy, we can draw it from this storage unit and convert it into usable energy, which in our bodies, the currency to pay everyone is called glucose. Because remember, everyone, that's to get paid. And so in our bodies, the currency that we use is glucose. So those are our adipocytes, and sadly, they don't go anywhere. I think I'm sadly becoming very well aware of that they just don't go anywhere. Not that I'm doing anything actively to get them to go somewhere. I'm just willing them away. Apparently that doesn't work. You just will it away. Finally, we have our reticular cells. These reticular cells are going to be involved in a little bit of an immune response. So those are our fixed cells. Fixed meaning they are born, they grow up, and they die. They are the little small town girl living in her small town world. Then we have the wanderers. The wanderers, they are going to be systemically moving around your body. Systemic meaning all over. Here we have our white blood cells, known as leukocytes. Let me just give you a quick introduction to these guys. This guy is segmented neutrophil. He is the most numerous white blood cell that you have. He's the infantry. When a foreign invader comes in, he's the one that goes, oh my God, stranger danger, links arms, forms a wall, and says, you can't come in. Then this guy walks in. This is lymphocyte. Lymphocyte is the general of your body. He is the one that is in constant communication with your immunity group. And he's the one that's saying, okay, he's calling up on his cell phone. Oh, come on. Really?
He's a cell.
Get it? Because it's a cell?
Cell.
And he's calling on his cell phone? Because it's a cellular phone owned by a cell?
That's a useless thing. Good try.
Okay. Sometimes it's just for me, and that's okay. So he's on the phone and he's saying, okay, we seem to be okay with the troops that you've got in, or, oh my God, we're getting slaughtered. You need to send more military in. This guy is the Brent Banner / Hulk of the body. This is monocyte, and he really does have multiple personalities. When we have a foreign invader, immunity Groot is going to turn to monocyte and go Hulk smash. He's going to leave the blood, he's going to enter into the tissues, and he's going to do just that. He turns into macrophage, which literally means what? Big eater. So he just starts engulfing everything. Dead cells, dying cells, foreign invaders, members of his own team. He doesn't really have a whole lot of care when it comes to Hulk smash. Finally, we got these two guys. These are known as our granulocytes. This is basophil and this is eosinophil. And they're primarily going to be concerned with more parasites and allergy formation. When you have allergies, you can thank these two jerk faces for giving you the pressure and the snot and the drip down the back of your throat and the watery eyes. All of that is directly because of these two little jerk faces. Because they have decided that the pine pollen or whatever it is something that is probably maybe going to kill you. And so they are the ones that elicit that immune response. And it's the immune response that gives you all of the symptoms. Finally, we have these little guys called mast cells. Mast cells carry these little beacons. And they just basically wander around. And when they find an area of inflammation, we're going to talk about inflammation here in a little bit. When they find an area of inflammation or they find an area where there is a foreign invader, they plant their beacon, they turn it on. That's the equivalent of a histamine. The more beacons I have, the brighter the light. The brighter the light, the greater the immune response. These two little jerk faces are attracted to the light, just like moth to a flame. The brighter the light, the more of them are coming screeching, ready for a fight. What I want to do is turn the light off before these guys have a chance to start anything. How do I turn off a histamine light? Take what? Well, think about allergies. What do you take? Antihistamine. Well, if the beacon is a histamine, and I need to turn the beacon off, guess what an antihistamine does? Turns it off. Click. Suddenly now, the two guys that are responsible for the immune response, they don't see the beacon anymore, and the immune response is subverted, and we don't have it anymore. And that's what makes your symptoms go away. Because it is, in fact, the body's immune response that makes you have the symptoms. So those are our 5 wandering leukocytes, our wandering red blood or white blood cells. We do also have other cells that have macrocytic properties, phagocytic scavengers. Our white blood cell scavenger just happens to be this monocyte / macrophage. But there are a lot of other cells that can eat stuff and engulf stuff. And these are named based on where they are. Like you got Kupffer, microglial, histiocytes. You don't have to furiously write all that down. I'm not going to test you over those names. It's just you've heard them before. When we do get into more of our immunity response and immune system. Some types of connective tissue, we have loose and dense. It's exactly what it sounds like. Loose, you're going to have your areolar, adipose, and reticular. We just talked about the different fibers. All this is doing is saying the fibers that we just categorized, this is the tissue it makes. In our dense, we have dense regular, and what that means is all the fibers are moving in one direction. We have dense irregular, where they're moving in different, creating more of a sheet than a rope. And elastic, which is exactly what it sounds like. They can stretch and then maintain their original shape. So just going into handshake, how do you do, areolar. Hey, that would be a great test question. What is the most common type of connective tissue? Which of the following is the most common type of connective tissue? Areolar. That would be a great test question. Let's start writing that now. This is going to support. Now, the thing is about this is it looks like a sea sponge. It has these big open spaces. And these big open spaces can sometimes fill up with fluid. In our chest, if they fill up with fluid, it's called pleural effusion. Because remember a million years ago, God, it does feel like a million years ago. The pleura, you had your visceral pleura and your parietal pleura, which were the two membranes covering the cavity and the organs. And then we had in our abdomen, someone tell me what is the membrane in our abdomen? It's still visceral and parietal, but if pleura is my chest, it also starts with a P. Parietal. It is parietal and visceral. I'm hearing inklings of it. P, E. Huh? No, I think you're very, very close.
Peritoneum?
Yeah, see, you were I heard you mumbling very close to it. It's the peritoneum. When the peritoneum fills up with fluid into its spaces, it's called edema. I think you probably talked about that word in medical terminology. Edema is fluid accumulation within the tissue.
That's the lining of the abdomen.
Yeah, so the peritoneum is the lining of the abdominal cavity, and so that would be the parietal peritoneum, and the lining of the organs themselves, the visceral peritoneum. If I'm accumulating fluid, if it's over making fluid, that means that I now have fluid in my abdominal cavity. And so you can actually tap it. So you can take, there's a lot of stuff though that would make you have edema. If it's an accumulation within the abdominal cavity, it's actually called ascites. All of these fancy words just means I got fluid somewhere I'm not supposed to have fluid. You take a needle, jab it into the abdominal cavity, and you'll just suck out the fluid. Just free floating fluid in there. So sometimes in cats we have to do that. Sometimes in dogs with heart failure we have to do that. If it's right-sided heart failure, they'll get ascites. You have to pull off the excess fluid. So that's our areolar. Areolar. And it reminds me, the word sounds like it's very airy, which tells me big, open, airy spaces. Darn you, adipose tissue. So we just talked about the cells that make up the adipose tissue, which were called the adipocytes. Adipose is commonly known as fat. Now we've got two different kinds of fat that we can categorize. Now all of us have got white fat. Sometimes we also refer to it as yellow fat. If I take and I rip your skin off and we look at the fat underlying, it's going to be either white or yellow depending on how close to the surface it is. There is, however, another type of fat called brown fat, and it looks just like that. This we only see in newborns, infants, and hibernating animals. As the animal, so as the human or the baby grows and matures, it transitions back to white. But what brown fat is think of it like super, super, super concentrated, high, dense energy. This makes sense though. If you are a bear and you've spent the summer and the fall gaining weight, and we've concentrated that energy into these little micro packets. Now when you go to sleep and you are having to break down that fat for energy for what, 3, 4, 6 months? I can break down smaller volumes of it and get the same amount of energy. I don't want to be breaking down humongous volumes of fat, because when you do that, you release a toxin called a ketone. And if the ketone accumulates in your body faster than you can get rid of it, you become acidotic. In fact, what's the condition called? Ketoacidosis. Well, the way that you get rid of the ketones is you urinate them out. Is my hibernating animal getting rid of any ketones? No, he's not peeing. The problem is, though, is it'll alter the pH of your body. And it will cause multi-system organ failure, and that's kind of not the point of hibernating. So what we're going to do is this brown fat, super, super hyper-concentrated energy. So I only have to break a tiny bit down in order to get the same amount as a very large amount of white fat broken down. Does that make sense to everybody? Our dense regular, as we just said, this is going to be where all of our fibers are moving in the same direction. And this is going to make up our tendons and ligaments. Tell me what tendons connect, what to what? This is going to be our muscle to bone, and then obviously our ligaments, bone to bone. The fibers all moving in the same direction. We have a very high tensile strength, but in one direction. I'll give you guys a minute. I'm furiously ready. What other kitties did you do today? Obviously, it wasn't just the one wackadoodle. Well, it sounds like we've got to change the names.
And those three are siblings, so they get along pretty good, they said.
Okay.
But Mittens is, yeah. Mittens is the outcast.
Mittens is just the little hellion. She's a little salty. That's all right. It's good practice. In clinic, not everyone is going to want to have you pet on them. So it's
Well,
good.
she was fine, like, she was playing with us when we weren't doing anything to her, but as soon as we started, like, fidgeting with her and trying to grab her in the towel, she just lost it.
It was like, no, I want to play with you on my own terms.
Cat, right?
It's a very cat-like attitude. Yeah, gotta say. Gotta say. Are dents irregular? Irregular meaning that the fibers are coming in from different directions. It's making more of a sheet than a rope. And this can withstand force in many different directions, where our dents regular is one. Our dents irregular, I can pull it from many different directions and it will withstand. This is what's going to form things like the joint capsules. I have a sheet of tissue that encapsulates my joints and keeps my joint fluid from leaking out. That would be the dents irregular. Is everybody okay with the difference between regular and irregular? Everybody on the bus?
What's the, dense river?
Dense regular is everything is moving in one direction. Think of rope. So if I have a rope, I don't have a rope. If I've got a rope, this rope withstands pull in this direction. But if I start plucking it like this, I've got a little bit of flexibility there. That's dense regular. Regular meaning they're all moving in the same direction.
Where would you find it?
In your ligaments and tendons. Ligaments and tendons. Dense irregular forms more of a sheet. So if you think about my joint capsule is a sheet like a plastic balloon that covers my entire joint. But I can withstand force from many different directions because the fibers are not just coming lined up like our rope. Of course. It's also found in our dermis, which is under our epidermis. And then you have elastic. These are going to be found in areas that are obviously prone to stretch. Your bladder, your stomach, large airways. These fibers are incredibly flexible and they can change their shape and stretch without losing their integrity and strength. So this is just exactly what it sounds like. When you think of elastic, well, that's exactly what we're doing. Elastic band, we're stretching, good stretch, highly flexible. Did we get new dogs today too?
Yes.
We did.
They're all big. No puppies.
No puppies?
No puppies. Oh, yeah. But they're cute.
Oh, what was up?
They're barkers.
They're barkers. How many did we get? Do you know?
I think 6.
6
Yeah,
dogs?
6. I think the biggest one is Toby. Yeah, Toby's so cute.
Toby.
It's really shy to me. I don't know what breed it is, but it looks so beautiful.
Aww. That's sad. I love that we have animals. It almost makes us feel like we're getting back to normal a little bit.
What's normal? Yeah. Wait.
Well, we haven't had animals on campus for any length of time since March. I mean, we would have them come in for the day and then have them leave because we couldn't have the students stay and take care of them.
Yeah.
Right? I can't have students in groups to do any of that. So now that we can have our groups of 10 to 15, as long as they're in different areas of the husbandry, yeah, this is the first time we've had animals on campus overnight for like Monday through Friday since March. That was an oogly mess. You want to talk about mess? We got our last group of animals in when the Sterlings were where you are right now. They started school. We got our animals in and we got, what, 40, I want to say it was 45 dogs and 15 cats. So about 60 animals total. 8 days. 8 days after they started, we went on lockdown. So we had to find foster homes, and at the time we thought it was for 2 weeks. So we had to find foster homes for all of the animals that we had come in. And 2 weeks turned into 3, and 3 weeks turned into a month, and that month turned into 2, and then the 2 turned into 3, the 3 turned into 5, and then we started slowly coming back on campus. So, yeah, Kookaroo. I'm very happy that we're moving in the right direction, albeit slowly, yes, but we're moving in the right direction. All right, so let's talk about cartilage. Somebody tell me what the medical term for cartilage is.
Chondro?
It's chondrocyte, cartilage cells. So what cartilage is it is found on bones, traditionally on the articulating ends where bones meet each other. And what it does is it gives a nice smooth surface for the bones to move over each other. Sometimes we'll even call it gristle. It does not contain nerves. And it helps to prevent the bones from rubbing directly on each other. We have a couple of different types of cartilage. Hyaline. Hyaline cartilage, well, hyaline, the medical term hyaline means glassy or clear. We have our elastic cartilage, which is just that. It can bend and bend over and over and over. And fibrocartilage, which again is exactly what it sounds like. It is cartilage made of very thick, very unforgiving fibers. So that's our cartilage. That's it. That's it.
What kind of cartilage is
That is going to be elastic cartilage because I can take it and I can bend it all day long.
It doesn't have nerves. Why does it hurt?
That, you know what? I love that question. So here's what's going on with that, because you're putting a needle or something in your ear, and holy smokes, does it ever hurt? So your epithelial and your dermal tissue does have nerves. So that first off is sending a pain response. Suddenly though, your body is like, hey, there's not supposed to be a hole right there. So we're gonna have to because remember, in my mind, you have your body and then you have a separate entity, brain. And brain is constantly trying to communicate with body. So brain is like, hey, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, body, but got something messed up going on right there. And body's just like, I don't hear you. And so brain says, okay, you know what? there's something wrong. So what it does is it starts sending little nerve impulses to areas that do have nerve innervation. So it's kind of like sending a message, kind of circumventing sending the message. Can't send the message immediately because the cartilage doesn't have any feeling. But he's like, hey, I need you to be aware that there's something going on. So what he does is he makes all of the nerve endings around it start firing so that you are like, ow, there is something wrong, because pain is never normal. That's a big problem that our brain has trying to communicate with our body. Pain, we normalize it. Oh yeah, it's, oh, it's just my daily headache. It's my daily, or I'm exercising. You get the stitch and they say, do what? Walk it off. Push through the pain. Push through the pain. Every pain you feel is your brain trying to give you a message. You choose to ignore it, but that's what that is. He is sending desperate messages. Hey, something's wrong, you need to pay attention to this. And meanwhile, we're just like, what kind of earring should I put in it?
They said it takes a minute to tell the ear that it's in pain. If ever you stub your toe and that's where it hurt, you know it's going for it.
Yeah, so what that is when you stub your toe, because obviously, does your toe have nerve? Yes. You stub your toe, you've actually damaged the nerve briefly. It's like you go up and randomly punch someone in the face and they're just like stunned. Like, what? Why did you do that? What is happening right now? And it takes them a couple of seconds to realize I'm going to punch you back. That's what's happened. You stub your toe and the nerve is like just kind of paralyzed for a second. Like, hey, why did you punch me in the face? And then he says, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna do something about this. And that's when he starts a screaming message up to the brain. And the brain is like, oh, holy crap balls, and is now in a loop, sending sensory motor, but it ramps up. So your pain response, when you first stub your toe, you're like, oh, geez, that's probably going to hurt a wee bit. And then it hits and your breath is just taken away. But then what happens to the pain? Doesn't it just ramp up? It just gets worse and worse and worse. That's actually called the pain cascade. And you're going to learn all about that when you get to clinical pathology. All of the stuff that has to happen in order for you to feel pain. But that's what it is. You punched him in the face and he's like, what? And then he says, okay, well, I'm going to do something about it. Like, obviously, am I simplifying it to the nth degree? Of course I am. Yeah, that's basically what's going on when you're having a delayed pain.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, like, say if, like, your back hurts or your head hurts and you take ibuprofen, how does that work to, like, how does it know which areas to target for that pain?
That is a fabulous question, and it doesn't. So, you have what are called non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAID. Ibuprofen, acetaminophen, acetylsalicylic acid, Advil, Tylenol, aspirin. They work on different ways. So it kind of depends on what you take, how effective it is. Some of them will, okay, again, I'm not going to go into super detail, but, and actually, we can pause, we can.
Since Tylenol was basically like suicide, why do they sell such
Big pharma. Big pharma.
That's a great question. And I don't have an answer for that.
Even they still sell Tide Pods.
Yeah.
This or that.
Yeah, I mean,
But that's just idiotic. Yeah.
But,
yeah,
That was a big deal. They're taking all this stuff.
but,
It's,
I mean,
Sure.
yeah.
right? I don't have an answer
I
for
mean,
that.
you're stupid.
I don't have an answer to that. All right, so types of cartilage. We have our hyaline, as I said, is glassy, kind of clear. Most common type of cartilage in the body. That'd be a great test question, wouldn't it? Which of the following is the most common type of cartilage found in the body? Hyaline. Also the most rigid. And that's all we need to know. Elastic is just that. It can have repeated bending, just like the pinna of your ear. This is the pinna. You think about cat ears, dog ears. This is the pinna, this outside part. And I can sit and bend this all day long. And it's going to go ahead and be elastic while retaining its shape, not causing damage. And finally, we've got fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is fibrous. This is going to be found between your vertebrae. Now, I do want to make one quick distinction. Here, see this white right here? That is the disc. Do you need me to go back?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
No apology. So in between your vertebrae, you have these things called a disc. And the disc is like a little fluid-filled pillow. So that when I have compressed, right, I've just jolted my spine and my vertebrae have all gone and kind of clacked. I don't want them to potentially damage. So I've got this little water pillow, like a Dr. Scholl's, in between each vertebra. What I have here is lined. That's the cartilage. This all white in between, all of this, that's the disc. Does that make sense? And the disc and the cartilage are two different things. So that's our fibrocartilage. This white, that's the disc. And then lining here is the cartilage. Does that make sense? Yeah, the disc is the meat in our cartilage sandwich. And the fibrocartilage makes the bread, and the disc is the meat.
I always find a way to throw
Yeah, how do you
something
come up
lunch.
with these fast?
Yeah, so.
I always wonder how you come up with these fast analogies.
I don't know, Doug. I give it all to Doug.
What does it mean to slip like this?
That's a great question. So you got the pillow. I'm trying to see if I got something that one.
Nice color.
This is my disc. This is a vertebra. And this is a vertebra. Right? Lining here is the cartilage. Right? Lining here is the cartilage. So I've got the sandwich. And now when I'm jumping, boop, boop, you see how that. But then what happens is something I have jumped, I have traumatized, and instead of I go, and this now starts to swell, and we now have this bulging disc. Well, what is happening over here now? Do we see that we have two vertebrae that are coming in direct contact with each other? And every single time I move, I have bone rubbing on bone. And I can tell you from experience, that is agonizing. It feels like you have broken glass inside your joints that is grinding away. That's a slip disc.
Does that affect the spinal cord at all?
Can. Because the body's natural reaction is to swell, inflammation, keep these two discs apart. Swelling is now causing compression on the spinal cord. So, has anyone in here slipped a disc? Ever slipped a disc?
My grandfather did. And
Yeah. So it's unbelievably agonizing, and mine didn't even slip it. Mine was just bulging a little bit from inflammation, my arthritis. But I can tell you, because of the compression due to the inflammation, because with inflammation you get swelling, and with the inflammation, you lose sensation. Like my foot went numb. I couldn't feel my left foot anymore. And I walk with a cane.
When it happened to me, I had no clue what happened. My mom just came to the ER and that's how it found out.
Yeah, you can lose sensation in your body parts because of the swelling and compression against the spinal cord. Is all of this starting to connect with you guys now? I love this so much.
How did I put it back?
All right. Bone is a connective tissue, believe it or not. We don't often think of bone as a live tissue because the only bones we ever see are dead. Bone, however, has blood supply. It has arterial supply. It needs nutrients and oxygen. It creates blood cells that need to get out of it. It is really dynamic and incredibly complex. We have these specialized little holes that enter into the bone. This is microscopic though, obviously we don't see this. These are known as Haversian canals, and these canals are what allow blood supply to enter the bone without causing the bone itself to weaken. We have others that we're going to talk about with the next chapter. We've got like Vogelmann's canals and nutrient foramina. It's just so you've heard the words before. All these little microscopic openings that allow blood supply to travel the entire length or width of the bone. Very well vascularized. If you've ever broken a bone, I think we talked about this a little bit last week. If you've broken a bone, you then tear all the blood vessels that are inside that bone and it bleeds. Your bone will bleed, causing you to have a terrible, terrible bruise. I think I told you about when I fractured my skull and I had this terrible, terrible bruise in the upper half of my face. It took about 6 weeks for it to go away. And it was super attractive when it got to that yellow-green stage. Yeah, oh no.
Can you not be aware when you break a bone?
Can you not be aware of it?
it doesn't hurt at first when you break the bone. Like,
I would say yes because my best friend's dad, he got divorced and he didn't know he broke his wrist until he had to go in.
I think it depends on the bone.
Maybe
It's going to depend on the bone and the severity of the break. If you have a hairline fracture in a non-weight-bearing bone, like for example, I told you all about how we changed my sister's memory with her collarbone. Right, we told her she fell out of a tree. She broke her collarbone. Well, when she was just standing like this, she was fine. There was no problem at all. It wasn't until they raised her arms up to take her jammies, put her jammies on, that she screamed bloody murder because it caused the two edges of the bone to come out of alignment.
So you wouldn't realize that you're on infection right here.
Not necessarily. And again, it's going to depend on your own pain threshold. Like mine, when I did that shearing fracture on my medial malleolus, that was a hairline fracture, and I've never felt pain like that in my life. Put me to the ground. Couldn't walk on it. I was non-weight bearing for about 3 weeks. And it was a hairline fracture. So it just kind of depends on the location and you. And I have a pretty high pain tolerance.
Yeah, I have hairline fracture right here. Getting the upper part of my jaw,
Oh my gosh.
Busted out my teeth, but no, I'm fractured.
Yep.
It wasn't as bad as it was.
How do all these things happen to you?
Holy smokes, I haven't even broken the tip of the
Because like you
iceberg.
keep just saying like you fractured your skull, then something about your leg. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh
it broke. I had what's called a slab fracture of my inside knob. The inside ankle knob. You know, you got your inside ankle knob and your outside ankle knob. That's called the malleolus. And I did a slab fracture of my medial malleolus, medial meaning the inside. I told you all about that, didn't I? I was having my house. I was getting rid of my carpet. I was getting tile put in. I was very excited, and I had this big sample of tile, and I was getting ready to take it back to the store. And it was very large, very heavy, and I was picking it up like this so that I could get some leverage, and I dropped it, and it came down right on top of my ankle knob. And it's called a slab fracture because it just like the edge of a glacier just comes off. And I've never felt pain like that. I have bruise from my toes to my knee. Yeah. It is, yeah. And it's called a slab fracture because it shears off the side of the bone. So, yeah, as we continue our educational journey together, you're going to be astonished because there's going to be a lot of times where I'm like, hey, blah, blah, blah. Anybody ever had this happen to them? And then I'm just going to slowly put my hand down because I'm the only one that's going to have my hand up. Blood is a connective tissue. I love the explanation. It is a connective liquid tissue. Has our cells, erythrocytes, which are red blood cells. They transport oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients. You have your leukocytes, which are your white blood cells. They are the military of the body. And you have your thrombocytes, which are your Spider-Man cells. Those are your platelets. Pew, pew, pew. When you have an opening anywhere there should not be an opening, it is your platelets that will first create this fiber and pull it together. They will then have a web so that your military cells can hang on and not go out the waterfall. And then they can battle off any foreign invaders that may be trying to get in. Yeah, so what that's going to do is like when you have a cut and you apply pressure, what that's doing is it's stopping the flow of blood out of the injury, and it's giving the platelets a head start at creating this little stopper so that we're not losing more blood than we need to. That's why you apply pressure. It's kind of like, here's my immediate speed analogy. I've got my garden hose, and my garden hose is spilling water everywhere. My garden hose is spilling out water. I can crimp the hose. The water stops coming out, and it gives my platelets time to repair it so that I stop losing the water. So that would be applying pressure. So oh no, I cut myself. So I apply pressure. That's crimping all those little blood vessels, giving my platelets time to pew, 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 and sew it, button it down. And then when I relieve the pressure, he's already got something in place. All right, we're gonna see how long my battery lasts because I just got a low battery. So if the computer dies before I'm done, Zoomers will just plan to reconvene tomorrow. I got 5 minutes. We're just going to keep going. Mucous membranes are always going to have a connection to the environment. Think of like the mucous membranes in your mouth, your nose, your eyes. They're going to be very absorptive, and that's why you can put medications on them. If you've ever taken like a B-complex vitamin, put it under your tongue. Or if you take CBD and you put it under your tongue, for anxiety or for pain. There are different pain medications, like I have this one up here, Buprenex, that you can just rub it on the gums. These absorb very, very easily through this mucous membrane.
Honestly, there's give it on CBD gummies.
Yeah, there's actually being a lot of, so that's still relatively new, but we found some really great natural remedies with CBD. Now, CBD is different than THC, right? We all understand that. When I'm saying CBD, I'm not saying that we're giving our animals marijuana. No, no, no. Don't do that. Trust me. I've had several patients get into the stash of their owners, and it's not pretty. CBD is an oil you can extract from the marijuana plant. It does not contain any mind-altering properties whatsoever. What it does is it helps to reprogram your immunity root. So where you might be deficient in serotonin, melatonin, your feel-goods, it will help to stimulate the production of those naturally occurring mood stabilizing hormones. If you have chronic pain, it will help with your immunity to get him to stop freaking the heck out about it. It's not getting you high. Okay? I just need to make sure everyone knows that. So CBD, there's been a lot of really, really exciting research being done with the CBD, so that maybe we can get them off of the Rimadyl, which is the dog-eat version of Advil. We can get them off some of these behavioral modification drugs, like we have amitriptyline for our cats that helps as a mood stabilizer. We have diazepam or Valium for our dogs.
Acepromazine, is that?
Acepromazine is more of a sedative.
Okay.
That's the one that you give them when they're scared of fireworks.
Same with trazodone.
Like that, yeah. All right, so I'm going to stop it here. We are